Hey, this is John Fernay, the co-host of the Maryland Crabs, and I am here today with a Maryland Crabcake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? It's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. Stay tuned and check it out. And make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast, or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. And don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. We are here at Killarney House in beautiful Davisville with Jeff Gunhus, who is an author. And thank you very much for coming out and joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. I love the ambiance here. No place better than the Killarney House.
It is a little bit early in the afternoon to be eating, but it's not too early to be drinking because, Irish and and all that. But we are doing iced teas. So
iced teas. I thought about the pint of Guinness, but iced teas feels pretty good.
But you are a resident of Davidsonville. You've been in Anne Arundel County for quite a while, and you're an author. I wouldn't say by trade, by accident maybe?
Yep, a little bit of both.
And it was sort of fascinating when I heard about it. You worked through a thing called Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, which was something that I had never heard about.
Okay.
I had no idea what it was. And then as we started to look in, it's like, okay, you've got like seven books that you've published, and now it's morphed into something more than what I would have thought it would be. So what is Kindle Direct Publishing?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity to talk about the books and share with the community. I grew up, I always enjoyed writing. So I always knew that I had a writer instinct in me. I always wanted to get my stories out there. And, some people play golf. And don't get me wrong, I played golf. I was just really, really bad at it.
Okay, good. We're kindred spirits.
That's right, there you go. But, for my kind of outlet, I would write books, write stories. And so I always had kind of a book in my back pocket, but I never really did anything with it. I always, kind of wrote them and then slid them into the desk drawer and left them there for a while. Then my son, I have 5 kids. My oldest son was...
God bless you.
I know. God bless my wife, really. Some people say she has 6 kids because they count me as one of the kids. But when he was 11, he was really a reluctant reader. He just didn't like to read, and growing up, I loved to read. That's all I did all the time. And so it kind of broke my heart that he wasn't really interested in reading it all. So I asked him, I said, if I write a book with you as the main character, would you read that book? Would you be interested in reading it?
Hell yeah.
He's like, heck yeah, I'll do that. I said, well, what if I made you, your age, but then made you a monster hunter who got to use a sword to chase after monsters? He's like, I'm all in. So,
at 11, sure, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, exactly. So I wrote that, and I write in the afternoons, and we'd wake up before school in the mornings. He'd read out loud, and he really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed writing it. And but I didn't want to go through the whole process of finding a publisher and that sort of thing. I'd done that once before with a nonfiction book, a career guide for college students.
Okay.
And I had a big fancy New York publisher, Hyperion Publishing, was owned by Disney. And I just...
He didn't have Aunt Becky as your...
Yeah, exactly. So when I had this book, other people started reading it, and so I decided to maybe get out in the world. So I looked around, I found Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, which is owned by Amazon. And basically, it's a way to get your book out in the world in a short amount of time, and primarily as ebooks. And back then, they had a paperback version called CreateSpace, which is also owned by Amazon as well. Now they're combined. KDP does both print and ebooks at the same time.
Okay.
So I was able to take that book, go through it, edit it a little bit better, upload it into the KDP system, and with the press of a button, nothing happened. I'm like, I thought something magical was going to happen.
Right. Confetti comes down, like Simon, push the button, and said you're going to Hollywood. Or...
right on. But about 3 hours later, I go on Amazon.com, and there's my book. I can search my name, and there's my book, there's my cover, and I bought my book online for the first time. And it was amazing. It's an amazing feeling to just that fast to be able to get my book out there in the world. Then more people bought it, and more people bought it, and then one of the Amazon algorithms picked up the fact that people were enjoying the book, and they pushed it a little bit, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people bought it. And people were buying it in France and Germany and England, and they gave me a little map to show where the sales were coming from.
Wow.
And I thought, this is awesome.
Let me step back a little bit, Jeff. Now, did
Sure.
your son help you write this book at all? I mean, when you said you're in the mornings, I mean,
Sure.
I'm picturing you handwriting out something or tapping something on a computer or
Yep.
something like that, and here's 5 pages to read.
Yeah, exactly. So I would type it up. I've tried to do longhand before. It always drives me crazy. I can never read my own handwriting. So I always wonder what I wrote. It sounded so good at the time, but what is it? So we would go through, and because the whole idea with a reluctant reader is you need to have those cliffhangers on a regular basis. So I would try to end those 5 or 6 pages on a cliffhanger, and he would guess what was going to come next. And so I'd be like, well, I'm not going to tell you what's going to come next. But as he would guess, his guesses were sometimes better than the ideas I had. So I would use his ideas the next day to go through and work the book out. So
he was an integral part of that. Now, when you submit this to Amazon again, and this is, I mean, you've done the whole thing. Are you doing all of the editing and all of the writing and everything else?
Yeah, it's true self-publishing, and I'm an entrepreneur in my day job. So I love the idea of being an author as an entrepreneur. You control all aspects of the production of whatever you're putting out into the world. So when I first started off, I was doing a lot of self-editing. I used my brother for my first book cover. So it was kind of a family affair. Once the next book, once it gained some popularity, and it ended up being a 6-book series, by the time I did book 2, I went out in the world. I found a professional editor. There's all kinds of freelancers out there, so I put them through an editing process, a proofreading process. I found someone to do my book formatting for me. I hired a professional artist to do the
covers and illustrations.
But all that combined was probably about $300 or $400. And at the time, there are all these vanity press type of operations that would, do 1,000 books for $5,000 or something like that. And that was just totally unnecessary. So I'd done all those stages and kept control the entire time, which I loved. I'm not a control freak. I just like being in control.
I hear you.
So that's also my experience working with traditional publishing back in the day. Was I enjoyed that, but also when they gave me the cover for the book, for that nonfiction book, I hated the cover. And I very diplomatically said, hey, maybe a different direction. And they said, no, we know what we're talking about. And so I have this book out there in the world with a cover I hate back in 2001. But this, having control of all aspects, was amazing. And then it's the flexibility, because one of my readers would find a typo someplace and they'll let me know about it. So I could just open up the manuscript, fix the typo, close it back up, press save, and the next person who bought the manuscript would now have the new version online, which was unbelievable for me.
Wow. So it is instantly correctable, or if you didn't explain something, you could put an author's note at the end of the
Absolutely.
End of the book. Which then you mentioned it's different countries are doing it. Now, does Amazon automatically translate this for you?
So in those countries, it is in English. But the process through doing this, other people have reached out because they saw it on Amazon. So other publishers have reached out and offered to buy the foreign rights to the book as well. So I have the book the Jack Templar book is published in Turkish, in Azerbaijani for whatever reason, and in Russian, which is exciting. And some of my other books are published in German. So it's fun to have have those covered. Those are outside the system. But the German one was actually, at some point as I started getting more success, there's within the whole Amazon universe, there's also Amazon Publishing. And there's more of a traditional, kind of a hybrid publisher. And one of those is called Thomas & Mercer. So Thomas & Mercer reached out for one of my books. That's actually a book that was based here in Annapolis. And it had the Naval Academy in it and has McGarvey's in it and all the local sites. And I'd self-published that book just because I enjoyed that process, the control. And they came up and found the book online, and they approached me and offered to buy the rights to the book and publish it through Thomas & Mercer, which is still through Amazon, but just a heightened level of promotion.
And is this a hard copy book still, or is this still electronic?
It's electronic and paperback version.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in that case, then they have another element within that kind of the ecosystem. They always talk about the Amazon ecosystem. Yeah. There's Amazon Crossing, which is their translation arm. So they reached out and grabbed that book and translated it into German across. And then within the ecosystem is Audible, which is their audiobook section. Mm-hmm. So all my books are available on audiobooks as well.
Wow. And this is, I mean, again, this is no cost to you, essentially, other than the cost to produce that first manuscript.
Exactly. So with that, you can, you have you have the electronic version yourself, but even at the print version, you're setting the price for your print version. So you can buy 1 copy, you can buy 100 copies, you can buy 0 copies,
That's great.
Whatever you want to do, and which is exciting.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Darn, I thought this was the Guinness being delivered.
We talk about the Amazon ecosystem, and that's where they own Killarney House by the time we get out. time we get out of here. But that is fantastic. I see that you came in here today with a stack of books.
I do, yeah.
And Jack Templar, where did that come from? Is that a play on words? Is that your son's name?
It is my son's name. So my son's name is Jack, and Templar is refers to the Templar Knights.
Okay.
The actual. So I tried to incorporate the legends of the Templar Knights throughout all the books. Because I've always been attracted to books where there's a combination of real history and then with the fiction kind of tied in. So you always kind of wonder where the fiction starts and stops in the books. So. And also because it's directed, those books are directed towards a younger audience, I wanted to sneak in a little bit of knowledge along the way, teach them a little bit of other cultures and that sort of thing.
How many books of your first book have you sold?
The first book was about 50,000 copies for the first book. Yeah, which was
I know so many self-publishers. Again, the traditional self-publishing. I think there's a house up in Frederick that is fairly large regionally, and I mean they're like, as you said. I sold 2,500 copies, and that was a lot for somebody that was self-publishing. Typically, I think in the old world of publishing, it would be, you'd have to have a publisher or an agent that sits there and said, okay, I think you can do 5,000 copies. Now we can have a publisher talk to you about doing it, and then you work with that. So you've got 50,000 that, and counting, obviously, because this is something that is always on the shelf of your cell phone or your iPad or your Kindle.
Exactly. It never goes away. And, it turned into a 6-book series. So, it's fun seeing over time new people discover the books. Some people who are now read the books, because the first one came back in 2012. So some of them read them when they were 12, 13 years old, and I still get emails from them sometimes, at the age of 20, that they went back and reread the series, because they remember it was part of their childhood.
When did the first one come out?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now here's a question. I know in a Kindle that you've got the ability to annotate a book in there. You as an author, do you see those?
You do. Well, you can. As a reader, you can make them public or not.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's fascinating because I do go back and look at them and see what people are responding to, and it's the kids' book for sure, and the adult books it's even more interesting. How many times they highlight the sex parts and.
So now what else have we written? Okay, we've got a 6 series Jack Templar.
Yep. So
Monster Slayer.
That's right. So growing up, I was a huge Stephen King fan. I love Stephen King. I read my first. I know, right? I read. My parents growing up were like, listen, you can read anything you want. They're pretty restrictive parents when it comes to watching different movies and TV shows, but books were a free for all. So I read Pet Sematary when I was 12 or 13. And it scared the crap out of me. It was fantastic. So I always enjoyed the horror genre. So my first kind of book for adults was a horror book called Night Chill. And Night Chill was something I'd had in my drawer for a while. Once Jack Templar started taking off, I took it out and dusted it off and reworked it a little bit and put it out in the world, not expecting anything to happen. And it just got traction early on, and that's one that when I go to book conferences and that sort of thing, other authors will come up and you're the Night Chill guy. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Now, did the Jack Templar series springboard you into that? I mean, do you think that your recognition for the Jack Templar series gave you the boost to have Night Chill, or was it? I think
if you're a aspiring author, you don't want to do what I do, which is write multiple genres. Usually there's a reason why, like the Steve Barrys of the world, or Jim Patterson's a little bit different, animal because he writes in every genre. But usually you have a genre, you have your lane, and you stick to it, so people know what to expect. So bouncing between middle grade fiction and horror, then I also write science fiction and I write thrillers. Not the best thing for a career, but for me this is my fun. This is that's why I read. I read a little bit of everything, so I write a little bit of everything. So I think knowing how the Amazon world works and knowing how to leverage KDP, because also within that area you can also market within Amazon as well. You can buy ads through Amazon. You can those ads can be targeted to people. If you like Stephen King, you might like Jeff Gunhus.
Sure.
And so as an entrepreneur, that was fascinating to me. I can actually go and find my readers and do the discovery and do the marketing part. Because if you put an amazing book out and do no marketing, just no one's going to know about it.
Tree just fell in the forest.
That's right. We know it.
We don't know what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I mean, the technology is beyond just being able to write the book and submit the book and have it delivered to phones worldwide, which is mind blowing, to be honest.
Yeah,
it
is. It is.
But to be able to target things. I mean, we talk about targeted marketing. You see that on Facebook. You see it pretty much everywhere you go. I think Amazon's Alexas are listening to me too.
Absolutely.
My girlfriend and I were talking about some shoes that she had, some water shoes, and not online. We didn't even have the phones out there, and we swear Alexa listened through the window, because next day on my Facebook feed it was all about those shoes.
I've heard that kind of story several times.
Like, there's your next horror story.
They're listening,
Jeff. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you've got horror, you've got children's, you've got science fiction,
and then also I write thrillers, and that's what the thriller is.
What's the difference in horror and thriller?
So in horror, there's always an element of the macabre. Sometimes it's supernatural. I like to write supernatural horrors.
Okay.
So there's always a supernatural element, which I enjoy. And you're focusing on just inciting that sense of fear. In a thriller, you're trying to create that sense of that suspense, that tension of time.
Okay.
That's the classic, the 24, the TV show. There's always a ticking clock of some kind in the background. So in the thrill that I wrote was kind of my homage to Annapolis, because we're transplants from California, came out here in 2000 and just fell in love with Annapolis. So that book is called Killer Within, and it's based right there in Annapolis. The main character is a FBI profiler chasing a serial killer, but she was a Naval Academy graduate. She goes for these long runs through Annapolis. It makes a little travel log of Annapolis along the way. Spent a lot of time on the bay in a catamaran, and some of the scenes take place there. So that was a lot of fun for me, because I'll get emails from people all over the world saying, I feel like I've been to Annapolis now. I'm like, well, you should come for real sometime.
And what's the title of that one again?
Killer Within.
Killer Within. Mm-hmm. And again, that's available on Kindles or whatever you get your ebooks from. I mean, there's any number of ways. I mean, Amazon wasn't stupid enough to just distribute on their own platform, so you can pick it up absolutely anywhere. That will be something I'm going to add to my reading list, because I always love local, even if it's fiction. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have any serial killers graduating from the academy, do we? I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
So, and then the last thing I did was in the Jack Templar series. Jack is my oldest son. He's 18, just graduated from Severn. And
congratulations!
Thank you. My next youngest is William. So in the books, Jack's best friend is named William, so he's in the book. The next oldest is Daniel, and in book 2, there's a character named Daniel that's all about him. In book 3, my daughter's name is Caroline, and Caroline gets to be the Lord of the Vampires in book number 3. And when I told her, she just started bawling. And I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I don't want to be a vampire. So she got over it. So I finished the book series, and my youngest, Owen, was not in any of the books. And so as he got a little bit older, that kind of made him a little bit mad. So I decided I wrote 2 books just for him, and those are my first time ever doing a kid's picture book. I figured if I've gone from adults down to middle grade, maybe I should go to the kids' picture book as well. Okay. So I found an artist online, actually in Bulgaria of all places, and I had him do all the artwork. I did the story, and then again published it on KDP on Amazon, and that picture book was available the next day after I had created it.
How many total books have you? So how many total books have you written?
13 books. 13 books, yeah. And I guess 14 and 15 if you count the little kid books. So,
and they are all available through Amazon on electronically?
They are. So some of them aren't published through the Amazon. My new book that comes out in January is actually through a traditional publisher called Kensington Books. Okay. There's pros and cons to each. I love the atmosphere. I love the support that I get from Kensington.
Well, you've got a marketing arm there as well.
Exactly. But at the same time, I love the flexibility and the control that I get with KDP. So I like to. My idea would be kind of one for me, one for them type of thing, and keep the books going. So.
It'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another series coming after Jack Templar or not?
So I don't think for the kids here. The kid books are more for my kids, and the kids are getting to an age now where I think that that's kind of their thing to have. My new book that comes out in January is the first book of a 2-book series that Kensington purchased, and based on how well those books do, it'll be a continuing series. It's a father-daughter CIA assassin team. So that's right up my alley. You have a bad day at work, you just sit down at your desk and kill people.
One can dream. Sounds like okay. I'm jotting that down there. So okay, go sit down at your desk and kill people. That's great.
But even that's a lot of that takes place in D.C. and I love just the research aspect of going down to D.C. and there's a scene that takes place in Arlington National Cemetery. So spending an afternoon there and visiting these great places and trying to capture the emotions of those places is a lot of fun.
What's your process in writing this? Okay, I mean you are not a spy, I'm guessing. I don't know. You wouldn't tell me anyway. So you go and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to set this in D.C. It's local. I can go get a metro there and explore. Do you just, you've got how does your process work? Do you get a rough concept of the book and then go down and are you just taking in the sites and just jotting notes?
Sure. So a lot of times it starts off with an overall kind of plot concept. What's the kind of the conceit of the idea? What do I think would be interesting? Sometimes those ideas come from reading newspaper articles. Well, my science fiction book, Resurrection America, came out an article that was in the paper about this experiment that had been done where they had been able to join the brains of 2 rats together. And those brains, or those rats, with those brains combined, were able to manipulate an image on a screen to go through a maze more quickly than by themselves. So the idea of a neural network. And then the implications were they would someday be able to join human brains together. Right. And so that turned into an entire novel based on that one idea of taking that to the way my brain works is how could you use that for evil? How could you use that in the future? Sure. So I start with an idea, and then it comes to character because we've all seen those Hollywood movies where it's just nothing but action and you just don't care about anything. It's just gunfire and chase scenes and who cares? Right. So you have to really have characters that people care about. So I spent a lot of time trying to craft character. I take bits and pieces from people I meet, people I've seen around and people that have been in my life and kind of grab them here and there, which is kind of fun when they recognize themselves in a character.
Now, is your son a voracious reader now? I mean, you started this.
Yeah, he is. It's great because they're reading all the books that I loved growing up. So they read Stephen King, they read Frank Herbert. They my now 10-year-old Daniel. He's written all of the Percy Jackson series. Every night before bed, they are allowed to read. Then there's night. There's the time that we're supposed to turn the lights off. And I did the same thing to them that my dad did to me when I was a kid. So there was Mom. There was this was curfew time. Lights go off. Right. My dad came and gave me a flashlight. And he says, "Use this under your covers. Don't let your mom see it.
Don't let your mom know. you got an hour."
So I did. I was funny because I did that to my older kids. I did that to my I have 10-year-old twins. My 8-year-old though, my oldest son beat me to it. And he actually did the ceremonial flashlight giving on my behalf. So I was going to go do. He's like, "No, I already did that, Dad. I already gave him a flashlight."
How do you work this in with your day job, man? I'm looking at the books. They're not short pamphlet books. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not Healthy Holly. Yeah. These are legitimate, thick, several 100-page books. I mean, how? And you said you started in 2012. We're in 2019, so we've got 7 years under your belt with 12 to 15 books, depending on look at this. Where do you find the time to do this?
So I'm an early morning guy, and it's out of necessity to have to be if I want to get this done. With 5 kids and 2 dogs, a horse, and a cat.
I'm not sure you can get breakfast done with 5 kids, 2 dogs, a horse, and a cat.
Yeah. So from 5 to 7 every day, that's my writing time, and that's great for me because I cannot, for whatever reason, I cannot write at night. My brain doesn't work like that. I've tried before. I've tried it. All the kids are in bed by 9. The wife might be out of town, and so I'll try to write. It just doesn't come together. So I get up, a little before 5 or right at 5. I can be at my desk writing by 5:15. But I think Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, which is if someone is listening is interested in writing, is one of the best books about writing you could possibly get. It's half autobiographical about Stephen King, but the rest is just really great insights into the craft of writing and the things you need to do to be a writer. And one thing he always talks about is, amateurs wait for the muse to come onto them, they have to be ready to write, light the candles, right, and that kind of stuff. Professionals is just ass in the chair and get to work. That is the secret to this is consistency. It's absolutely
whatever it is. Let's find my creative time if that's something that drives you. It depends on, I guess, what genre you're writing for. Mm-hmm. And I do it. This is when I do it,
and I do it 6 to 7 daes a week. Consistently.
Wow.
I did it today, I did it yesterday, I'll do it tomorrow. It's just if whether I want to or not, whether I'm hungover from the Killarney House or not.
Right. Are your kids terrified to bother you during the writing hour?
Yeah, they the older boys, they have to get up at 6 to get to school on time. So I'll pop out, get another cup of coffee during that, and say a quick hello, and then we're out of here.
Back in.
Yeah. So it is hard to get back in once you're out. You kind of get into a zone for a while, and then. But, over time, you just kind of learn to write wherever. I'll even, when I take my kids to practice, I coach them in soccer, but watch them in basketball and lacrosse. So at practice, I'll take them there. I'll bring my giant Bose headphones, and noise-canceling headphones,
right,
and I'll write during practice as well. So I can write. I can nap anywhere. I can write anywhere.
What do you use? Do you use a specific software to write? I mean, I've heard of different writing softwares that sort of help you sort of flow and different things. I mean, is there a specific thing, or do you just hack away at Word?
I've poked around on those things. I've never found a benefit for me personally. I know other writers who swear by Scrivener and those types of programs. I just bounce around on Word. You just go through and just go. Not a very fussy writer. I can have distractions. I do like to have music playing though. I listen to movie soundtracks while I write. A couple of things, a couple little tricks over the years is I try not to finish a chapter at the end of the day because starting a new chapter sometimes can be hard.
Yes.
So if you have how that chapter is going to end, leave yourself a little bit short, and that way you know what you're going to start on the next day. You know how that chapter is going to end. And then go forward after that. And
then you get your juices flowing again, I guess, in the morning to...
Absolutely. Once you get going, sometimes, you'll look up and it's an hour has gone past, and it just flies like that fast. It's amazing.
Consistency. Okay, I'm taking notes here. This is...
It's the hardest thing, and I would because people have asked, and sometimes I say, listen, just start with 15 minutes. It doesn't need to be 2.5 hours or 2 hours. Just start with 15 minutes a day, but every day. People always say, well, I would love to do that. I can't find the time.
Well, there was a great speech given to a university in Texas by a Naval Academy graduate general, and he said, my advice to you is to make your bed first thing. And it's all over YouTube. It's make your bed first thing in the morning. You get something accomplished, and you can check that off on your box. It said that's the thing that you need to do. And I guess it probably translates into writing as well. Is that you've got to sit there. You have the consistency. You sit down, and if it is for 15 minutes, then at least you can write or get some ideas or thoughts down.
You did something exactly. There's on my screensaver. There's 2 things that pop up. One says "Get back to work, loser." So if I wait too long.
Little incentive.
And then also Writer's Right is on my wall because that's what writers have to do. You have to write. You can't think about writing. You can't get ready to write. You just have to sit down and write.
Now, do you work from home for your day job?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit easier.
It's nice to have a yellow lab at your feet. That always helps the writing too.
It's funny when I divorced. I made a conscious decision to be able to be there for my kids when they were younger and growing up and everything else. And in hindsight, it was probably the worst financial decision I've ever made, but it was obviously the best moral decision I've made. And to be able to have the flexibility to be able to, put everything on hold and we're going to go watch that soccer game. or we're going to go do this or play baseball or whatever it is just, unbelievable.
Absolutely. It's so good for the soul too. When if you're having a bad day, this like that 15 minutes of playing catch on the deck, and then before going back to work with my 8-year-old is, all smiles.
What's next for you?
Well, I've got book 2 I'm working on right now. So book 1 of this new book, which is called Silent Threat, comes out in January from Kensington. And
right.
So I'm halfway through, or 2/3 of the way through book 2, and I love the series. I love the characters. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've got a trip coming up to New York where I'm taking a tour of the New York Public Library, because in it there's a huge action sequence of the New York Public Library using their underground system and of the underground book delivery system. But the New York Public Library, behind it, there's Bryant Park.
Yeah.
So all the books in the library are actually in 6 stories beneath Bryant Park.
Really?
And so all the books are housed under Bryant Park, and there's like this little train system that the books go in the train system, and they get sent up to different parts of the library. Which, the way my mind works, like, well, what if the bomb was in that little train system and the bomb was being delivered elsewhere where all the dignitaries are and everything?
Yeah, we got to learn our Dewey Decimal System to figure out where the bomb's heading.
Exactly. Make a note for myself. That's a good idea.
It's funny. You talk about libraries. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Anne Arundel County Public Libraries, but boy, and I don't know how old you are. I mean, you said you've got a son that just graduated, so we're probably not that much older than you, but when we were growing up, the libraries weren't anything like what we've got now. I mean, just the things that they have to offer, the computer resources, the databases, CDs, movies, it just never was there when I was younger. It was the crotchety old librarian with the card catalog.
Yeah, exactly. But librarians are the salt of the earth. They're just great. I mean, my kids go to Daysville Elementary School, and the librarians there are just so great at working with the kids, trying to find out what they're interested in, suggesting new books. And right down here, down the road for us, they're just great about creating community events, and they do the Lord's work.
I would consider myself a reluctant reader, and I mean, even as an adult, I mean, I do not like fiction.
Yeah,
for the most part. I mean, I love nonfiction. I love history. I love current events and whatnot. However, I know my girlfriend is a voracious reader. I mean, you sit there and any time of the night, she's on the phone, just scrolling through page after page after page of the latest. I would never go to a book club.
No. Well, the secret about book club is that's really usually just a drinking party with the book. Book what book?
Okay, I'm going to note that one down too. That will work. But what is the easiest way to see what you've done? Amazon and I'll spell your name as Gunhus. And is that the easiest way to do it?
It is. Amazon's great. My website, Jeff Gunhus, www.jeffgunhus.com is a great way to go on there. You can see, people can sign up for my newsletter. They can go on to Amazon to see what's coming down the pike. I'm often at C.Cafe down in Annapolis, too. If you see a guy sitting in the back, furiously typing away at his computer with his
the one down on City Dock?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I love that place.
Now, you're not taking Senator Assel's seat, are you?
I have sat there before, and
get the hell out. John's a great guy. It's a great local coffee shop down there. That's for sure. Jeff Gunhus, thank you very much. This is fascinating. I go to jeffgunhus.com, and that's JEFFGUNUS. Learn all about him. How often do you do your newsletter?
About once a month.
Okay.
Yeah, trying to bother people too much.
Okay. About once a month.
Yeah.
So it's I hear you there. These books are fantastic. Take a look. If you've got a reluctant reader, I think it probably is something to do there. And even if you're local here and say, hey, this is written about a kid in Davidsonville, it's probably enough to get somebody off the phone and into a book. Or maybe off the phone and into a book. On the phone and into a book. Whichever way you want to look at it. This is fascinating. I think that it's the Amazon program has brought self-publishing, really defined it. I mean, self-publishing, I always heard what that was, and it was like, it really wasn't. It was basically it was vanity publishing.
It was vanity publishing. It cost a lot of so much money to do it. So I've worked with so many people just locally who have a book in them. They've finished the book, but they're not sure what to do next. And it's just such an easy process to go through. And once you start doing the research and you start seeing how easy it is to really get your book out there in the world, I always encourage people, if you think you have a book in you, give yourself that 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, and just do it consistently. If you only write 500 words a day, the average fiction novel is about 80,000 words. That's only 160 days to write that first draft of a novel.
And is it complicated to get into the whole Amazon?
It's really not. You just go to kdp.com or just search Kindle Direct Publishing. One thing Amazon is great at doing is making it easy for you to use their systems and get inside their processes. So they'll go through and lay it out for you. Then what I always suggest though with aspiring writers is don't trust yourself to edit your work. Don't trust your spouse to edit your work. Yeah. Go find a professional editor. And really there's a cottage industry that's kind of grown up around self-publishing. So if you go to sites like freelancer.com or Elance or Upwork, all those sites, if you search for people that edit your types of books, you'll find a ton of people, lots of reviews. Send up to some down. Don't be shocked when it comes back covered with red, because mine still does. Yeah, sure. That's what you want, though. You want someone that's going to take a critical eye
and clean it up. You need a separate eye. I mean, your eye is totally biased whenever you write it.
Absolutely.
A good editor makes a good product great, and it's really a collaborative effort between the two, for sure.
Absolutely. I think what KDP has done, though, is not only for electronic, but also for paperbacks as well. If someone has a book in them, they can get it out there in the world. They don't have to worry about how do I find an agent, how do I get through the gatekeepers, how do I have the books on submission. Sometimes it's 6 months before you hear back from people because they're so overflown, and you can get that same experience, get your book out in the world, and just do that a step of a finger.
And there's no inventory.
That's the huge, yeah.
Jeff Gunhus, thank you very, very much. Again, jeffgunhus.com, and that's JEFFGUNUS.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This has been the Maryland Crabs podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.